Very good evening to you. You're watching Biz1st in Focus. This evening we have an interesting guest to talk about the capital market in Sri Lanka, the Colombo Stock Exchange and its history. Mr. Malik Kader, who was a former senior advisor to the Ministry of Finance, who was the former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. He's an attorney at law himself. Thank you very much, Mr. Kader, for being here with us in the studio today.
Well, it's nice to be here in the studio with you all.
Thank you. Let me get to the topic straight away. When we talk about the Colombo Stock Exchange, not everyone seems to understand the process behind it, or if at all, how it came to be and its purpose. If you can tell me what the CSE does.
Yeah, in fact, very interesting to see how the CSE was created. In fact, it has a very long history in Sri Lanka. Well, when the Dutch invaded Sri Lanka, they in fact found that Sri Lanka was very fertile, had very fertile soil, and they wanted to basically create value in this country for them as well for the country. As a result of that, in the early 18th century, they did research and they found that the coffee plantation, right, would be very successful here, and as stated, right, they indulged in coffee plantation. And then Sri Lanka in the 18th century, early 18th century, was one of the world leaders, even better than the Caribbean coffee.
Right.
And we had a name in the world for coffee. Now these coffee plantations were done by entrepreneurs, foreign entrepreneurs like the British and the Dutch people. It was not companies who did it. Right? And they single-handedly basically did all these things. Unfortunately, there was a virus which came, and this virus destroyed the entire coffee plantation. Now these individuals, entrepreneurs who were doing this, they were single, they were on their own. When I say single, they were not that they were not married or anything, but they didn't have support. They plowed all their money into this, and they did this particular venture. So when this disease came, right, they didn't have support.
Right.
So as a result of that, this whole thing crumbled. So now when this crumbled, they wondered now what else should they do. They did more research and they found that tea was also a good crop in Sri Lanka. So they wanted to do tea. But they had a bad experience because they did coffee as entrepreneurs under their name.
Right.
They felt that no, this is not going to work. We need to get other people also joined into this whole exercise.
Right.
And then in Britain at that time, they felt that they need to form companies in Sri Lanka. It's as a result of that in the mid 18th century that the Companies Act of Sri Lanka was formed.
Right.
British companies basically came to Sri Lanka, right? They formed the companies and they basically had companies. So then that is how the birth of the Companies Act of Sri Lanka came, because of the tea plantation.
Right.
Now, having companies was not good enough. You needed to have money, right? So you needed to get shareholders to come in. You needed to access capital. The people are not going to come and give money to a private company, right? So they wanted a public perception. They wanted the public to participate. That is why in 1896, to fund the tea plantation in Sri Lanka, these British companies started what was called the birth of the Colombo Stock Exchange, that goes way up to 1896, and that is how basically they got access to capital and they funded the tea plantation at that stage.
So from 1896 up till 2017, the year we are in right now, there must have been quite a great amount of growth involved in the Colombo Stock Exchange.
Good. Now, from 1896 until late 1970s, this worked as a closed club.
Right.
Right? It was a
closed group.
Right? They got into a room and they said, look, I have 100 shares to sell, I have 200 shares to sell, I have 1 million shares to sell to someone there. There were no written laws.
Right.
Right? What they had was basic ethics between people. Gentlemen. Understanding, right? And that is how they operated. And it was not public. It was, as I told you, a closed club. But in 1977, with the open economic policies of the then government, they felt that capital market is the way forward.
Right.
Capital market is a place where companies, entrepreneurs can come and raise capital for their ventures.
Right.
So government felt that they need to promote the capital market. That is why in 1987 the SEC Act came into being, and as a result of that the formal regulation of the capital markets of Sri Lanka commenced in 1987.
Right.
Talking about the growth in 1987, the all share index, I think 86 or something, started with, the index was 100.
Right.
Today the all share index is almost 6,500.
Right,
If you look
right.
at that. So which means that would show basically the growth of the Colombo Stock Exchange from 1986 to 2017. It might not be exactly, because at that time there were about 100 companies, but now we have got something close to 300 companies. So that is the growth potential
Right.
where you see in the Colombo Stock Exchange.
So now we have spoken about the history of the Colombo Stock Exchange and how things came to be. There are serious topics revolving around the CSE as well. In the very recent past, we saw of issues of pumping and dumping, issues like manipulating the stocks. These were very widely discussed topics. I want to focus your attention firstly on this manipulation. Can something like this happen? Can someone individually come and manipulate the stocks and maybe boost the amount of the price? Can this happen?
Well, in fact, not that it can happen, it happened. It happened. It happened for a variety of reasons, because you see, our investors are not very literate on capital markets.
Yeah.
So there was when, don't you know, someone starts buying because they feel that, okay, the price can basically go up, and then there are people getting to the bandwagon and they basically shoot up the price. The other issue is basically the liquidity in the market. Right now, for instance, you can see some of the bigger companies who have a bigger percentage of public float, right? You call it that the market is liquid with that particular stock.
Yes.
It's very difficult to manipulate those stocks because those stocks are in plenty.
Right.
But there are some companies, right, unfortunately, where the public float is still not good enough, and the company not financial liquid, but it's not liquid in terms of shares available in the market to buy. Right? Those are targeted companies where one could, right, on a concerted effort, can get together and manipulate. So those are the things the regulators will have to worry and look at.
Now, these issues, I want to focus your attention on more issues as well, but taking consideration of this issue that we have discussed right now, has there been an effort to actually control this or stop this from happening? Is there someone looking at this?
Well, in fact, when we were the CC, we basically brought in some very stringent regulation, not for the market, but for trading activities. Those regulations were bought, like we bought price bands, we bought credit restrictions. Now, when you say credit restrictions, not credit restrictions as per se, but we wanted credit to be formalized.
Right.
So those are things we bought in, but now I think all those things are in place.
Right.
At that time, right, people are up in arms, okay, when these things are bought. But the very things we bought are now in place.
Keeping the system together.
And the system is working very well.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. We have to go into a short commercial break. We will be back. You're watching Biz1st in Focus. Welcome back to the show. You're watching Biz1st in Focus. We are in discussion with Mr. Malik Carter about the Colombo Stock Exchange. Now, we spoke of the capital market in the country, and we spoke of the history of the CSE. I want to ask you about the impact of the capital market in our economy as a whole.
Well, in fact, the capital markets in any country should and will play a big role in the economy of this country, right? And then that is why I think in 1977, when the open economic policies were unveiled, they wanted the capital markets to play an extremely vital role in the development and the economy of this country. Well, up to now, it has done a lot of good to the country, and then there is a lot more which can be done. The capital markets should generally reflect the potential and the economy of the country. For instance, we take the banking sector. Now, if you ask whether the banking sector is represented in the capital markets, only about 40% of the banking sector is represented in the capital market.
Right.
60% is still outside. The two state banks, three state banks put together, and a couple of other government institutions coming together. You see, it might not be proper for us to say that the banking sector is reflected in the capital market. There is a portion of it. Fortunately, you could see that they take that same direction as the other banks as well.
Right.
We take the insurance.
Yeah.
Right. Insurance, the big giants are still with the government. Right. The majority of it. That is on insurance and banking sector. Take the other big economic indicators of this country. Take the port.
Right.
Right. It's big. Take electricity. Take water. Right. Take all what the government is doing. All those things are not still reflected in the capital market. So if you want the capital market to reflect, right, the potential of the country, you need to have the majority of these things listed on the Colombo Stock Exchange. Now there is this bad word of privatization and all that kind of stuff people are talking about, but I don't think that is correct to say so, because even the government entities being listed on the Colombo Stock Exchange, you get a tremendous amount of value in them.
Right.
You don't have to divest control. Government can still keep control, and government can also make use of the mechanism of the private sector to drive these things.
Yes.
Right?
This is an example in other countries.
Yes, so that is how it's been done. So this private-public partnership is important. The airlines, right? If you need to raise money, you could basically do a roadshow, raise money for the airlines in other countries, and then you could bring investors, provided they are listed, because people want an exit mechanism. Right. So that is what I think the way forward, where this country should move through. And then look at the capital markets of Sri Lanka, Chaturanga. Capital markets, in comparison to all the other countries in the region, we're extremely tiny. Right? Yeah. We are like, 1,000 of it compared to Singapore, Malaysia, or in India, or any of those. Does
this have to do with the investor confidence, or is it? What is the reason for this?
No, you need to grow the market. I think it's a primary responsibility of the state to help develop the capital market and grow the capital market. Right. Now we are just about under 3 trillion rupees as market capitalization. This will take us nowhere. You get a big fund coming into this country, he'll not have anything to buy, he'll not have anything to purchase. So you need to first, my gut feeling is that you have to grow the market about 3 times. Well, if you are unable to grow it domestically, we need to make Sri Lanka a financial hub and get some of the other countries, the securities in those countries to get listed here. There can be issues which might crop up, but then you have professionals to iron out these issues, and you need to think outside the box.
This attracting investors and actually expanding the capital market of the Sri Lanka is also a responsibility that the government should look at. Now, we have instances where global institutions like the Asian Development Bank has come forward and said, we'll provide you technical assistance to do this task. Why is there an importance of institutions like the ADB coming into the country for technical assistance? So is there an actual benefit through this? How does that work?
Yeah, in fact, actually, we need a lot of technical assistance. So that's why I think funding agencies like ADB are providing technical assistance. We need to basically attract foreign investors to come in here, for which basically we have to be competent. So that's why we need to have a regulation in place. I think ADB and World Bank, they're more important in looking at that the domestic infrastructure is in place for foreigners to come in and invest in this country. So those are good things. Those are things in the right direction, and I think we are moving in the right direction. Of course, we need to understand that the world economy is also not doing that well, and getting foreign investors coming in at this moment of time might be an issue, but that doesn't mean that we should not be, moving out. One of the things is we should also not be waiting till foreigners to come and queue up and sign up here and have
wait for things to automatically happen.
No, we have to go right where the money is. We need to go to where the foreigners are. We need to identify the potential investors, right, and go and do road shows.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the things we have to. Maybe we are doing that. Maybe it has
Not
not worked, right? But still, that is money well spent.
From what you are telling me, Mr. Kada, what I understand is that Sri Lanka has to, maybe, am I right in saying this, that Sri Lanka has to market itself
We
to
need
the
to
world?
showcase. We need to showcase. We need to showcase.
But doesn't the investor confidence play a role in all of this? Because if I am not confident in investing anywhere, I wouldn't go, and simple as that.
Yeah, for instance, the ground realities will have to be good.
Yes.
If basically the sentiment is not good here,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone will want to come. But if the sentiment is good, I think we'll find a lot of investors coming, because you should not forget, right? Sri Lanka is strategically located.
Yes.
We have some of the best people here. Literate-wise, our people have a very good understanding of doing things compared to some of the other countries in the region, right? So I think investors, foreign investors have identified this potential.
Right.
So, I mean, you cannot expect them to do this overnight.
Yeah.
So I think we can see gradually the foreigners coming into this country. But the gradual is not good enough for us at this moment of time. We need to accelerate that.
From the history that we spoke about, from 1977 up until, I'm going to ask you a general question now. From that year onwards, even before that, Sri Lanka has been termed a developing country. Institutions like the CSE and situations like the capital market can actually make a difference and make this country go from developing to a more developed country, if at all. Why is our country still a developing country, in your opinion?
Yeah, in fact, that's a good question you brought. In fact, we are the International Organization of Securities Commissions are concerned. They have categorized countries where the security markets are concerned as to developing countries and developed countries. So we still fall into the category of developing countries. Well, to get into the next level, you need to have size. You also need to have market sophistication.
Right.
For instance, countries like New Zealand are in the developing country lot.
Right.
So you need to have that market sophistication as well. So we need to bring all those things for us to move into that developing state. One of the more important things for us to look at currently, I think the Colombo Stock Exchange is looking at demutualization of the Colombo Stock Exchange. Now that is a way forward, because currently the Colombo Stock Exchange is a not-for-profit organization. There is basically the interest they would have being organization that is demutualized, right? They don't have it right now, because a demutualized Colombo Stock Exchange would be profit-oriented, and they would basically want to
it's a business
faster than they're doing right. Currently, it is a not-for-profit organization. So if the demutualization happens, we've been talking about it for the last couple of years, I think that is a way forward, right, in us moving towards a developing stage.
With that, Mr. Carter, we have to go into another short commercial break. Stay with us. You're watching Biz1st in Focus. A very good evening to you. You're watching Biz1st in Focus. We are in discussion with Mr. Malik Carter, who is an attorney at law, the former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and a former senior advisor to the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Carter, we spoke about the CSE extensively. Now, I want to ask you a question. We spoke about the expansion of the CSE so that we can actually move on from being a developing country for so long. But do we have that amount of products to offer to the world so that they can come and invest?
Yeah, no, so that's why I said we are a small country.
Yeah.
Our market is a small country.
Yeah.
A market, I mean, we're looking at about 3 trillion in comparison to about 3 to 4,000 trillion. Our closest neighbor.
Yeah.
So we actually have to be competing with them.
Yes.
So we need to bring that market sophistication also into this. So we need to add a lot of products into the market. We need to get foreign listings to come in. We need to increase our level of trading. We need to increase our level of participants, market participants. Now some of the good participants aren't here because for them there is no appetite. There's no appetite. So we need to invite them to come. So that is why I think this question of moving Sri Lanka towards being that regional financial hub becomes important. I think we wanted to do that. I think last year or the year before, the budget had an indication of that. The Colombo Port City is also coming in. So we need to, whether we like it or not, we need to have FDIs coming into this country if this country is to develop. Whether we, I mean, there's no two words about it. And then we need to have public-private partnership into this whole thing. The government, I can understand why government should be running hotels.
Right.
Right. So that is not what they should be doing. Right. Those are things they should divest. Right. Government should not be in business. Right. You should basically hand it over to the private sector, not that you basically give everything wrapped up to the private sector. If you can't do it, you have the public-private partnership. You have to derive the benefits out of the private sector.
Yeah.
And then that is how a country could move forward.
With your experience, Mr. Kader, how is the capital markets future in our country looking like?
Yeah, the future of the capital markets, in fact, soon after the war, you saw a depressed or a suppressed capital market, moving out from 1,500 points, going up to 7,000 points, reflecting the true value of the market. Although there were a couple of manipulations, the prices went up, there were bubbles. I mean, all these things happens in market. I mean, not that it is something new, right? It had to happen, it happened. Now it's over. Now we have recovered. We have to now look at the way forward. Looking at the way forward is, whether you like it or not, you need to take the bull by the horn. Right? And then you need to bring some of these big boys into the market, right? The government will have to lead the pack. You need to get some of these big institutions, right, listed. Make it a good product. I mean, there's a whole political issue about privatization. If you can educate the masses about that, I'm sure you'll be able to, work through this. There's also, you must remember, in Malaysia in the 1990s, Mahathir Mohamad, right? He led the pack, and that is how Malaysia developed. Malaysia's capital market developed, and I must tell you, the demutualization of the Malaysian stock exchange, the model which all the other countries are following, was done under his regime. So you need to lead from the front.
Now, we know that the government of Sri Lanka has a plan, a financial plan, to make this the financial hub of the region. How does the future and this plan coincide? Do they go together, or are they in the complete opposite sides? What does it look like? The plan, the government...
Well, on the face of it, you can see a couple of mismatches happening. We are moving towards those goals. But then, I think, well, we are in a learning curve, a learning process. Things will gradually fall in line. And I think that is what should happen, and in the best interest of the country. I think we have a very literate workforce in this country. Together with that, I think we're looking at now labor. We find a lot of labor from other countries coming into this. Some say that that's a bad sign, but I see that as a good sign, because there's work, right? We don't have enough people. So that's the way forward, and I think hopefully the next 10 years we need to capitalize, and we need to move towards that goal.
I want to ask you once again a general question, because we are running out of time, Mr. Kader. Am I right in saying that if the capital market of our country, the Colombo Stock Exchange and institutions that operate the finances are left aside with the politics, or if you take out the politics from it, will there be a development? Will there be a better financial sector in our country?
Yeah, to answer that question, I don't think there is any political involvement right now in the institutions you are talking about, because they're fairly independent. They have to be independent. If they're not independent, well, then there's a problem. There's a huge issue. Fortunately, right now, that's not happening. And then, unfortunately, there are other issues which are cropping up, like the world economy and the debt servicing and all those things, interest rates being skyrocketed to about 14-15%, preventing people coming into the market. But we need to have a good foundation. I think a proper plan has to be done. The plan has to be vetted, and then if that is done, I think automatically things will happen. Should happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kader, for being here with us on Biz1st in Focus this evening. We have spoken of a number of issues surrounding the Colombo Stock Exchange. We hope to get you on the show once again very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It is a pleasure being on the show.
Thank you very much. We will join you again next week, same time, same place, with another interesting guest like Mr. Malik Kader and another interesting topic such as what we discussed today. Thank you for watching.